Let's welcome all his presentation.
Hi, as he said, I'm Zach Salvon. I'm from the University of Texas, Dallas, and thank you for coming. My presentation is on negation effect on emotion recognition in Twitter. So first, I'm going to do a background, and then go through my proposed method, experiments, and then finish up with a conclusion. So, I'm sure you know, but Twitter is a widely used framework for people to share opinions, and emotion recognition can help track how people feel about certain people, products, or even events that are happening or have happened. Here's some example tweets of emotion-related tweets. The first one on my right experiences joy. If you can read it, like he's just happy that his kids want to spend time with him instead of their friends. And this one on my left is to experience sadness, but to me it was more just funny that they had to run over the flip-flop. So negation plays an important role in emotion regulation. So I have two examples here. Without negation, it would probably be representing good when the not negates it, and the second one's more about disgust. It wasn't soft, so. And without modeling negation, the system cannot recognize the actual emotion being portrayed. And how about proposing a method to model negation to fix this problem? So there are already some existing negation models that people currently use. And most systems use an emotion-related lexical weight to help classify the emotion being portrayed as a feature. So there's the rest of the sentence, which uses the rest of the sentence from the negation queue as the whole negation scope. Some people use a window size. Most popular I found is 3 or 5, where they use the first 3 or 5 words after the negation queue as the scope. The next non-adverb and first word of lexical weight are sort of similar, where they use the next non-adverb, like all the words from the negation queue to the next non-adverb, or the first word of the lexical weight as the whole negation queue. End of phrase just takes the entire phrase or to the end of the sentence. Dependency parser. People usually use dependency parser to create features to help them classify the negation. So there are some problems with the current methods being used. Rest of sentence, window size, next non-adverb, first word lexical weight. None of these methods have any semantic or syntactic information to help classify the negation scope. The end of phrase doesn't use any simple grammar rules that help you determine which phrase you're actually trying to get from the negation scope, and the dependency parser doesn't use any phrase information in its attempts to get the negation scope. And our plan is to incorporate phrase relations based on simple grammar rules to help fix these problems. So this is our proposed method. What we do is first, given a tweet, we do some pre-processing, and then we identify the candidate phrase, and then after getting the candidate phrase, we do some simple rule-based cuts on the phrase to make it shorter, and then the result is the negation scope. So the pre-processing that we do is given a tweet, first we get the POS tags using the CMU POS tagger that's specifically made for tweets. It gets like 90% accuracy on their POS tags. What we do is we replace all emoticons and hashtags with special symbols so it doesn't confuse the parser we use. And during this example, I wanted to show that the tagger can is actually able to distinguish when a word is used as a hashtag or it's used as an actual word. So in this case, hashtag dicey, they're using it as the actual word dicey. So it's able to distinguish when it's being used as a word. So after that, we detect the negation cue. So in this example, it's didn't. We use we just have a giant list of negation cues that we go through. And then we split the tweet into two parts, the non-negated part and the negated part. And then we pass the negated part into the parser. So then to identify the candidate phrase, it's based on a simple grammar rules determined on if it's a noun, adjective, adverb. So if a noun or determiner follows the negation cue, then it's the entire noun phrase. An adjective is just the adjective itself. An adverb has two cases where if it's a comparative, it's the whole phrase, or if it's just an adverb, then you just do the adverb as the negation. A verb is the entire verb phrase, along with, similar to a preposition, it's the entire prepositional phrase. So then we do the rule-based cut. So we, if it's not just one word, like some of the cases word, then we trim the phrase to obtain the final negation scope. So first you find the occurrence of the first proper noun, pronoun, preposition, and conjunction. So then you do one of the following rules. So if a pro and proper noun and a preposition all occur in the phrase, then the preposition has more precedence than the other two. So you would cut at the preposition. If a conjunction happens before any of the other three, then you cut it at the conjunction. But if it happens after, you go back to the first rule of precedence, where the preposition has more precedence. Then the phrase, if the phrase is entirely proper nouns and prepositions, which doesn't happen very often, but it does happen a few times, then you don't make a cut at all. And then, like the last example here, we remove all these trailing hashtags from the scope. So these trailing hashtags aren't the scope, since they're just labels, not actually words. And onto our experiments. So first, I will describe the corpora and lexicons we used in our experiments. So we used two existing corpora, the hashtag emotion corpus based off Muhammad. They collected tweets, and they used emotion-related hashtags for their label generation. They had 20,000 emotion-labeled tweets. And we also used web blogs to see if our system could work on web blogs as well, and also the different task of determining if emotion versus no emotion. So they collected web blogs. They used the Mechanical Turk service for annotation. They did a majority vote as their label. They have 4,200 sentences left. And as you can see from the table, this is just a distribution of the negation percent in each emotion, and how much the corpus contains of that emotion. And we also created our own emotion corpus. We use the method similar to Muhammad, where we use the hashtags as the label, and we were left with 6,200 tweets after removing hashtags in the middle, because those aren't actually used in the label. We wanted to create our own corpus, because most emotion label corpuses aren't. They're very skewed, which is how it is in real life. More people tweet about a certain emotion than the other. But for our experiments, we wanted to have a more closely distributed number of emotions for each number of tweets for each emotion. So the first lexicon, we only use two lexicons. The first lexicon is the NRC lexicon, where they use PMI to calculate their emotional lexical weights. And they do unigrams, bigrams, and they also have skip n-grams in their lexicons. Then we also made our own lexicon based off latent semantic analysis, because based on recent research, latent semantic analysis is actually better for getting the similarity between words than point-wise mutual information. And we only have unigrams and bigrams in our lexicon. So the features and experiments we used. These features are very commonly used, emotion-related. People use these in many tweet analysis papers. The only two affected by emotion negation are the last two, the words per emotion and the emotion score, because those are the ones that use the lexical weights. Some people also use the number of elongated punctuations and the number of all capital words, but through the experiments I've noticed that they didn't really change, like maybe but 0.002 in the score, so they were not very effective. So I just removed them. We had 3 tasks for our experiments. Task 1 is a binary classification for the emotions. So one emotion versus, so like joy versus not joy. The second task is multi-class classification, so all the emotions. And then the third task is emotion detection, where it's detecting if a sentence have emotion or no emotion. So for the first 2 tasks, we used the hashtag emotion corpus and our emotion corpus. And for the third task, we used the WebLog corpus. We use macro F1 as our evaluation metric, and we use an SVM with standard hyperparameters and tenfold cross-validation. So the results. So for the results, we observe an improvement in our system over the one without negation. So including negation improves the performance in emotion classification and emotion detection. So in our emotion corpus, we observe the improvement is lowest for joy, but that's because it had like 0.08% negation, so it shouldn't improve very much. And we can see that the system made a higher improvement on emotions that contained more negation. So like anger and sadness were very high because they had the highest percent of negation in them. And from the results of task 1, we can see that joy still has the highest F1 score. And I think it's because when people talk about, when they use words that express joy, the number of words that overlap with the other emotion are very few. So there's not a lot of overlapping words. So even when I was just using unigrams as a feature, joy had the highest F1 score over the others. So in the hashtag emotion corpus, similar to our emotion corpus, we can see that the more samples that contain negation, the higher the improvement over the system without negation. In this case, the F1 scores are more skewed because it's a very skewed corpus, where 40% of their corpus was joy, and only like 3% was disgust. So the F1 scores for them are very different, which is why we created our own corpus. And from the results of task 1 and 2, we can see that it indicates the effectiveness of modeling negation in emotion classification. And for emotion detection, we can see an improvement achieved by our system over one without negation. So this also shows that our method can work for weblogs and for the binary emotion detection task. So we also tried to see how much better our lexicon was than the NRC lexicon that used pointwise mutual information. And so for task 1 and 3, we performed these experiments without using any negation, just to see the pure performance of adding the lexicon itself. So for all 3 tasks, our lexicon performed better than the NRC lexicon. But when we used both lexicons together, it got the best performance. And when a word overlapped, so if both lexicons shared a word, we just use our lexical weight. So we compared our method with the other methods I mentioned previously that already exist. When compared to window size and rest of sentence, our method performs better because it's along with these perform better than those. They're more dynamic, so they can capture a better negation scope. Where these are, especially window size, is a very static method in capturing negation scopes. And they also include like no syntactic or semantic information. For next lexical weight and next non-adverb, our method performs better because it's able to determine relationships between words, whereas these two methods they don't consider any relationships besides lexical weight or an adverb. And end of phrase. End of phrase, ours performs better than end of phrase because it doesn't consider any grammar rules when getting the phrase. So if it just finds a noun and it gets the whole, if it finds like a adverb and it gets the whole adverb phrase when it should just get the adverb as the negation, it's why it doesn't work. It also, the phrase can be too long, which is why we cut it down. So this does no cutting of the phrase at all. And for dependency parser, we used in a paper it was a SemiVal 2013 paper where Muhammad's systems performed the best. We used his features with the dependency parser and modeling negation for these experiments. And as we can see, our method performs better than using a dependency parser because a phrase relation captures better information than the dependency parser. And here's just some examples of our method versus the others. So our method is in the brackets. The actual scope is in brackets. Our method is in bold, and underline is the window size or the rest of sentence. So the method on my right side is the underlined. And as we can see that the underlined method doesn't correctly get the negation scope in any of the examples. So also some error analysis. We didn't do any sarcastic or passive aggressive detection, so we couldn't get any. So like working late on a Monday, #joy, which is sarcasm. We wouldn't be able to get that. And then tweets with like flipped words or missing words. So like without the play him, that makes no sense at all. So we couldn't correctly classify that. And there's also, I've noticed there are multi-emotional tweets, which we did not consider. So a tweet could express multiple emotions. And when a tweet requires more information, so like if it's a reply, we need the actual original tweet that it's in a reply to determine the emotion. So I'll wrap it up with the conclusion. So overall, we developed a new method to model negation for emotion recognition in Twitter. We created a new emotion labeled corpus and lexicon, which are freely available if you want them. We showed the effectiveness of modeling negation in Twitter emotion recognition, and we show that the grammar phase method can better detect the negation scope in tweets over other methods. And for future work, we plan to include the sarcasm and passive-aggressive detection along with multi-emotional classification, and we would like to try some neural network methods for deep learning. So these are the references to the corpus, the two corpora and lexicons I used. And thanks for listening. Any questions?
I have a curiosity because I missed something. You mentioned LSA's method of deriving the emotional lexicon. I see the fact that it is smoothing with respect to BMI kind of analysis. Where do you take the seeds for the emotions?
Yes, I used to get the cosine similarity. I used the hashtags were the labels of the tweet for the emotion seed.
Also, you derive a sort of distance supervision from the labels.
No, I just did a turn tweet matrix, and I used the cosine similarity of
the words.
Yeah, to the label.
Names of the categories.
Yeah.
Just a couple questions. So first on emotion detection versus emotion classification. So I don't know where I have this right, but for emotion classification, you assume that there's emotion.
Yes.
Right. So
yeah.
So is it kind of a two-stage process where you do emotion detection first and then do the classification? Is that what people usually do?
I haven't seen people do that. Mostly it's two different things,
Okay.
but you could do that. I don't see why not.
Yeah.
Just
Well, I mean, I was surprised you didn't include like a neutral category in the emotion classification. So everything has an emotion.
Yeah, everything was assumed an emotion.
Okay. So the other question is, did you perk your emotion labels? Did you crowdsource the?
No, I just used I what we did is like it was similar to the Muhammad's method, where we assume that the tweeter will label this tweet themselves.
Okay, with the hashtag, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my following question to that was, has anybody looked at, if I left the hashtags in, how much my accuracy goes up, just not just the lexical content, but also the hashtags.
I didn't try that, but it probably would go pretty.
Well, is there any bias in the people that actually tag your tweets?
I don't know. I just went off the paper, and I trusted that their experiments were right.
So when you do the negation, it seems like the performance of the model, anchor and sadness, they are pretty low compared to the other categories. Because I think they are around 50 to 40 to 50%. Even here compared to the others. Do you have, like, especially sadness, do you have any explanations?
Of why these are
Much lower than, say, joy, surprise. Because I saw surprise, it's very hard to detect, based on my own experience, than, say, sadness.
As far as my corpus, I think it has to do with the. It's just that certain words overlap with certain emotions. Like I've noticed that even like I was just reading through some tweets that some people or like anger and sadness share a lot of words in common. So that's why it's probably the lowest. But for surprise, it would be really low, but because it took a while, because not a lot of people tweet about surprise. So I had to force it to get even with everything else.
Oh, okay.
So like in the real world, this should be pretty low.
That's right.
Yeah.
So basically, you made the label balance.
Yeah, I wanted to have even labels for everything.
So to follow up on that, could you describe a little bit more how you create your corpus and how do you create the ground truths for labeling the corpus?
Yeah, I just it was kind of similar to this corpus. That I just assume that the tweeter it self-labels their own tweet. So like if they have like hashtag like joy at the very end.
So you have a predefined set of hashtags.
Yes.
And that is already classified into specific emotions.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I think I use 6 words for each emotion.
Okay.
Okay, as thanks, this equals completion. Okay. Okay. Let's introduce